Did we just solve our off-grid homestead's water contamination issues with a $30 DIY hack? Not only are we losing 40,000 litres of water a day off the surface of our dams, but we've got some serious water content issues that we're dealing with. Hey, I'm Regan and welcome to our homestead. If you watched our last video, we walked you through how we set up our complete off-grid homestead water system, and that included testing our water, where we discovered some water contamination that we were going to have to deal with. Well, in today's video, we've got an idea for a DIY hack that's going to deal with that, but it's also going to mean a major change to our system that might even help us deal with these evaporation issues. So let's go have some DIY fun. Well, every good homestead should have one of these. This is a firefighting pump and they are such a versatile little unit. You can pick them up for a few $100s. Basically, they are a workhorse. About 3 litres of fuel is going to do about 3,000 litres of water an hour for about 4 hours. So you should definitely have one, especially if you're in a bushfire prone area. But today we're using this to make a bit of a change to our water system. All right, if you'll remember from our last video, we had discovered a whole lot of mineral content in our bore water. Now we've got access to really clean, almost drinkable bore water, except for a whole bunch of minerals, sulfates, calcium hardness, and salt. In fact, we've got about 2,000 milligrams per litre of salt in our bore water. Now we ran a simple little test after we discovered that, and we thought, well, what happens if we just put it through a consumer level under sink filter? Is it going to do anything? I suspected it wouldn't do anything at all, because salt you can't filter out mechanically. It's bonded molecularly, is that a word? It's bonded at the molecular level to water molecules. And so you need really expensive, really wasteful methods of treating it, like reverse osmosis. We didn't want to have to go down that route if we didn't have to, but I kind of wanted to see what would happen anyway. So we put it through a filter. It removed almost all of the sulfates. It removed about half of the hardness, the calcium that was in it, and it removed about 3/4 of the salt. And that gave us a bit of an indication of what was going on. If it could pull the salt out of the water, that means that the salt wasn't in the water. It was attached to that mineral content that we were high in the water anyway. And that can happen in a bore situation. So we were really lucky in that regard. It pulled our salt content down from about 2,000 milligrams to about 500. And now that is on the upper limit of drinking water. Really, you want kind of 250, 200 or lower for good drinking water, but 500's within the safe drinking limit. I'm still not convinced that it would be low enough for our gardening activities, especially considering all the salt water issues that we've been having with gardening this year. And so what we really wanted to do was have a go at switching over to dam water. Now, as I said, we're losing about 40,000 or 25 to 40,000 litres of water a day off the surface of our dams. And we only use maybe about 4,000 litres across everyone that's here, animals, gardens. So we're a drop in the ocean compared to what's being done through evaporation, but we can still take some steps to mitigate that. And here's what we thought. Well, if we've got the bore anyway, and it runs every afternoon anyway, and I'll explain that because Kirsty's parents have a diesel generator that they run every afternoon just as a little power top up during power hungry times. And so it's running about 4 hours every afternoon anyway. Our bore pump runs at about 2,500 litres of water an hour. That means that we can put 10,000 litres of water back into the dams every day. Now, it's only a quarter of what we're losing, but it's something. The other strategies we can do, we can encourage lily growth and reed growth. Vegetation helps to mitigate evaporation, but ultimately what we're relying on is rainwater. So we've decided to switch over to taking dam water up to our tanks. We're going to deal with what we need to filter out of dam water versus what we would be filtering out of bore water. And we're going to top the dams up with bore water. I know what you're thinking. Doesn't that mean that you're putting that 2,000 milligrams or 2 grams of salt per litre into your dam? And isn't that going to have an effect? Yes, technically, but we get about 600 to 700 millimetres of rain every year. That's enough, given our catchment area, to fill our 5 million litres worth of storage capacity about 2.5 times over. So we should be flushing that water through on a pretty regular basis. We've got one heavy wet season of the year, and that's typically over the summer because we're bordering on subtropical. So the bulk of that's going to happen then. We haven't had a lot of rain this year. We had some in the last few days. Now, I know we didn't cop it on the coast like you guys did. Thank you, Cyclone Alfred. That wasn't really a cyclone, or was it? I don't know. Some people got their houses caved in and their, bottom stories flooded. So it was a deal, but it wasn't really for us out here. We just copped the edge of it. And so that meant a little bit of drizzling rain. Unfortunately for us, drizzling rain's kind of a pain because it rains a little bit, soaks into the ground, then it stops, and then it rains a little bit more, soaks into the ground a little bit more. What we really want is a whole lot of heavy rain all at once so that it doesn't have time to soak into the ground and it runs off. That's how we catch the bulk of our water. We didn't have that kind of rain over the last few days. So look, it's going to green up around here a lot for the next few weeks, and the dam's probably caught a little bit, but nowhere near what we would like. That being said, we're not worried about using dam water for our personal usage in terms of using it up. We've got about 1,200 days worth of dam water that we would be using at the rate we're using it. We're never going to use it up. It's always going to get replenished by rainwater. It's just that fluctuating rain season that really affects it. So yeah, putting bore water in there is going to help. The other thing is, with the dams being in sequence like that, the first dam gets to act like a big sieve essentially. A lot of those salts being bonded to those minerals are probably going to sink, but those rainfall events are probably going to help flush that salt through the system. And so on the regular, we'll just test it and we'll see if it's getting higher. Obviously, it'll affect things like vegetation, wildlife. We want to put fish in the dams, and it's freshwater fish, so we don't want to create a salty dam. We'll just monitor that over time. If it's having a negative effect, we'll reassess. All right, what it does mean is we've got a different filtration situation that we've got to deal with. We're now no longer going to be filtering for mineral content, we're going to be filtering for organic content. And like I said, I've got an idea to DIY this. So let's head up to our water tanks. I'm going to sketch something up, we're going to put something together, and hopefully it works.
All right, so here's the basic idea. We've got our water tanks. They are connected kind of in series, and then that runs down to the tiny home. So what we want to do is put filtration in at this point right here. So here's how I plan to do it. We are going to put a connection here. We're going to make it a threaded connection so we can kind of tap into it. And I've got these bits of PVC pipe with a bend in them. So we've got one section of 1 meter pipe, another 1 meter section of 100 mil PVC pipe with these bends in them. And that gives us the opportunity, they've got caps on the end of them as well, and we'll make a threaded join here, we'll connect it, another threaded join here and connect it. That gives us the opportunity then to fill these two sections with two different types of media. And basically what we're going to do is a sand charcoal filtration. Now what's going to be really important is how we deal with the media not moving through that section there and in and out of the whole system. So for that section there, what we're going to have is a piece of geofabric, and we will kind of smush that in to there, and then that geofabric is going to prevent anything from basically shifting through. Basically only water is going to be able to get through it. Now we're going to do similar down the bottom as well. So we're going to have one end here, one end here. Now we're going to have these caps on them, and we will include a piece of geofabric here and another piece of geofabric here as well. That's going to stop any media from moving in and out of those two chambers. And then the way that we're going to convert these PVC pipes to a threaded connection is through what's called a tank adapter. So a tank adapter, you basically just drill a hole, and then it comes with a male and a female threaded end that you can then just, and it's got like a rubber washer either side as well, there and there. So you can basically, it's for water tanks, so you can basically put an outlet on your water tank wherever you want. And so that tank adapter is going to go in there, in that cap, and that'll give us a threaded connection that we can then connect to our main line as well. Well, I've got all my parts and tools ready to go. Most of this gear I bought from Bunnings, apart from a few things, packets of screws, some poly pipe fittings that I have lying around. Those are those tank adapters that I was telling you about. Look, what I'll do is actually I'll put together a complete parts list, and I'm going to redo that diagram because it was a bit messy, but also I've changed it a little bit since then. And I'm going to make both of those things available for free over on our Patreon page. So if you're interested in doing this build yourself, or you just kind of kind of want a starting point, that's a resource that I'm just going to flick up on our Patreon page. You can head on over there and grab that. All right, what I really want to do first is have a look at the water that's coming out of our tanks. So these are our main storage tanks. They've got exclusively dam water in them now, so we've emptied all of the bore water out that we were using, or we used it up, and now they've got only dam water. So I know that what I get out of here is going to be just pure dam water. So I want something to compare to. One quick test I just thought about doing, we need to see how much of an impact this filtration unit is going to have on the flow rate. So yeah, we can test the quality, color, taste, all of that of the water afterwards to see if it's actually filtering. Of course, it's going to do some sort of filtering, but is that going to slow the water down so much that it becomes problematic down the line? So we've got 40mm rural polypipe line, and I've got about 50 meters of it between here and the tiny home. We did the calculations, that's about 60 liters of water held in the line. So that's like 10 toilet flushes, or a couple of decent showers. So I don't think there's any scenario that we would use all of that water all at once, but we do run garden irrigation sometimes on pressure, which means after our pump. And that means that we're supplying, actually we did the maths on this as well, it's around about 200 litres at a time. So like 3 times what's being held in the pipe. Where that's going to be a problem is if the filter slows the water coming out of the tanks and into the line to the point where it can't replenish it as fast as it's being used, then at some point it's going to run out, lower the pressure in the line, the pump is going to sense that, and it's going to switch off. And then we'll get the pump kind of going on and off whenever the pressure builds back up again, and that could just be a little bit problematic. So easy way to test this, we'll compare how long it takes to fill a 10-litre bucket here with no filtration, and then we'll compare it afterwards. So here we go. Well, that was dumb. I don't know if I'm going to include that little blooper on there. That was a bit embarrassing, but obviously, think about it. All right, let's put an elbow in there. This could still get a little bit messy, but at least I'm not going to be pouring water into my Makita tools over there. We'll just count in seconds, I guess. All right, about 8 seconds to fill a 10, 11 litre bucket, I think they are. So we'll just compare that afterwards and see what sort of a difference it makes. That is some pretty murky water. I mean, put it in a glass and wow, there's some floaties in there. It doesn't look too bad, but yeah, I'm not gonna be drinking that. So that's what we're gonna be comparing it to. That's our control, I guess. That's the color of our control. I don't know what the taste of it's like. I'm not game. My goal is that what I get out the other end after filtration will be nice and clear. I really have good high hopes for that. So here's how it's going to work. I've got my 2 chambers in my 2 1 meter lengths of PVC pipe. In one of those chambers, I'm going to put sand. So we've got tons of sand on our property. In fact, like a good 1/3 of it is like really sandy throughout the middle of our property. So that's going to be an excellent first filtration. Sand is a great mechanical filtration. So if you've ever had a pool before, you probably had a pool sand filter, and that's because it just has the ability to act like a giant sieve. So that's going to take out all the chunky, gunky, slimy bits, all the stuff we don't want going down the line and gunking up all of our gear down the line. Then we're going to separate that with some geofabric, and what we're going to put in the second chamber is charcoal. Now I bought this horticultural charcoal, but I suspect it's probably not going to be quite enough to fill that chamber, and so I've got lump charcoal that you just use in your, your Weber, your barbecue. This is not ideal. Ideally, what we want is activated charcoal. Now, activated charcoal is a little bit more costly, but it's been through a heat and steam treatment process. So they heat it up till it's red hot, they add water to it, the steam that's created then just punches millions upon millions of tiny little holes throughout the charcoal. So this is already a pretty porous substance, which means it has a massive surface area, and that makes it great at absorption. Now, if this was activated charcoal, just 4 handfuls of this would be enough surface area to cover basically 100 acres. 4 handfuls of activated charcoal equals 100 acres of surface area. I'm going to be using unactivated charcoal, so it still does an all right job, but it's about 20% as effective. So the amount of unactivated charcoal that I'm going to be putting in one of those 1 meter, 100mm diameter lengths of PVC pipe is going to have about an equivalent surface area actually to the size of this property. It's going to have about 100
250 acres surface area. That's amazing to think about. I'd love to see that under a microscope. But what that means is it has this awesome absorption ability to basically take care of a whole lot of organic compounds. In fact, what it really takes care of that we're interested in is what's called VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. Now, that doesn't mean that it's taking out all the bacteria and all the viruses that might be in the water, so you really need a second stage filtration if you want to make it safe for drinking, which is exactly what we've done. We've got one of those units under our sink, so we don't drink the water that comes out of here. Definitely, even after this pre-filtration unit that we're building, I probably wouldn't drink what comes out of there, at least not on the regular. That being said, look, I was raised on tank water. There's something to be said for the sterile environments that we get raised in and whether or not they're actually good for us. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's put into your municipal supply water. You be the judge, you do your own homework. I'm not a scientist nor a doctor. I'm certainly not an expert giving advice, but I know that I prefer water without chlorine and fluoride, and we'll just leave that tinfoil hat moment right there. Hey, just before we get into the build, let me tease just a little bit of news that I'll share with you at the end of this video. We've got a change coming up to our channel. Well, not a change, an addition really. Hint, hint, we get tons and tons of comments that I just don't have the ability to reply to every single one of them for. So we're making an addition to this channel that I am just super excited about. So stick around to the end of the video. I'll tell you all about that, but cue the music. Here's a time lapse. All right, so that took a good 5 minutes to come through the line. But basically once these lines are charged, like once all that material is kind of hydrated in there, you know, you're not going to be waiting that 5 minutes every time. Well, it's certainly not 1.5 litres per second or whatever it was earlier before we set this up. But to be honest, I kind of expected that. But this is what I'm most excited about. Now that I would drink. You know dam water, if you've ever swum in a dam or a creek and you get some in your mouth and you inevitably swallow some, it's got that kind of like sweet, rich, earthy kind of taste to it. It's there a little bit, but not really. All right, flow rate problem. So we've removed the colour. We've removed most of the smell. I'm pretty happy because as a pre-filtration device before it gets to our under sink drinking water filter, this is awesome. But this is going to take hours to recharge our main line, and that's a problem. Luckily, I'd already thought about that. In fact, I thought about it way back when we set these two tanks up. So the way I've got these lines configured between the tanks is sequence filling. And so basically it fills the top of that one first, comes out the bottom of that one. I can just join them together. That's what that bit there in the middle is about. Or I can have it run back up that line into the top of that one, out the bottom of that one, and then that be the outlet. What that means is I've got kind of 4 different spots on this line where I could decide to put a filter. So what makes sense is that this is going to be our raw dam water, that's going to be our filtered dam water. Now that'll take hours, probably days to come across, but that doesn't matter because we fill this one up in sort of one day, and that gets us around about 10 to 14 days worth of water, you know, for both of them. So what it means is I've probably got about 6 or 7 days worth of water in one of them. And even if it takes 2 or 3 days to take filtered water across, that's awesome. I've also got the opportunity then to take either pre-filtered water through this device or just straight dam water. Like say if I want to use it in my gardens, for example, straight dam water is not going to hurt. In fact, it may help. So we'll put this device in line, but we won't put it in the main line because that's just going to take way too long to refill our main line. So that's a couple little upgrades and tweaks that I've done, but we have solved some major issues through this device. Maybe reducing the amount of media that's in each unit. Maybe I could shorten the length of those pipes. It probably doesn't have to be that much, but the results speak for themselves. This was such a cheap, easy DIY hack. I hope it's been something useful that you might implement in your home or homestead as well. I know it's made our water cleaner, you can see it. By default, that should make it safer to drink, but ultimately what we've done is we've solved that major salt content issue in our water by switching over from bore water to dam water, and that is going to have a massive effect on our gardens. Speaking of gardens, in the next couple of weeks, we'll do a garden update video where we show you everything that we're prepping for autumn, and in that video, I'll show you the effect that that salt was having on our gardens. I think you're going to be really surprised, so keep your eye out for that video. All right, on to the news. Like I said, we get so many comments and questions on all of these videos daily, just dozens and dozens of questions. I try to read them all. I certainly can't answer them all, but we've been looking for a way to engage with you guys, our community, on an even deeper level. And what we've decided to do, outside of our Patreon page, which is one way that we do it, is we are, as of next month, launching the Rustic Spirits podcast. It's an opportunity for Kirsty and I to sit down and do a longer format video where we just get to sit down and have a chat with you and talk in depth about some of these topics and answer a whole bunch of your questions. We've got dozens of ideas for episodes that we want to do, but we want to hear from you as well. So hit us up in the comments down below, tell us what topics you'd like us to dive deeper into, and we'll make sure we include that in an upcoming podcast. Hey, if you want the plans and parts list from this build, I'm going to make that available as a free download over on our Patreon page, so you could head over there, grab that for free. If you want the full tutorial video, I'm going to make that available to our Patreon members. So thank you to all of our patrons who support this channel. That goes a long way to helping us make more videos like this. If you want that content, all that extra bonus content, you might consider becoming one of our patrons over there. But until next week, we'll see you on socials. We might see you on Patreon, but we'll definitely see you in next week's video.